Question: what is a life-changing book to you? To me, I feel like a life-changing book is a book that either changes your perspective or if you develop a hyperfixation on it. You know, a book could change your perspective for better or worse, but developing a hyperfixation, it doesn't have to be good or bad. It just means that you're obsessed with it in some way, shape, or form. That's just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments. Honestly, a life-changing book could be like a book that you so fervently believe in that you just have to recommend it to everyone. To be honest, if a book didn't change your life, your brain chemistry, don't recommend it to me. Just kidding. So I'm gonna list all of the books that have changed my life for the better and worse. No, they were all for the better. They were all for the better. We have 1 literary fiction, 1 self-help, 1 autobiography, and 1 realist drama book. Before I talk about the books that changed my life, I kind of feel like it's important for me to tell you exactly what I look for in a book so that you can kind of know like, oh, that's what her taste is. Because if it doesn't align with yours, then it might not be something that you put a lot of weight in, you know? That's also something that has really helped me out when finding books, is just recognizing that I look for specific things in order to have an enjoyable time when reading a book, you know? I used to think I only liked thrillers, and then I realized, no, I like the feeling of being thrilled. Like I like certain things that thrillers give. So what I look for in a book is I like a book that's thrilling, like I just mentioned. I like books with themes of grief. I feel like authors that are tapped into grief in a very real way have such a good way of connecting with their readers, because grief is one of those things, if you can connect based off of that, it just makes for such a successful story. Like I like grief because I like to cry also. I like to cry as much as I also like to laugh. So I like books with a sense of humor in it. The dark humor in books, if you can do dark humor well, I'm 90% sure I'm gonna enjoy the book. Then I also like books with explicit social commentary, because I feel like I'm looking to know what the environment is. I'm looking to know what the atmosphere is socially, even politically, because I feel like if an author is tapped into how they want their world to look and that translates to the reader, success all around. Anyway, so for the books that changed my life, like I mentioned, we have a couple of different genres. The first book that I'm going to mention is the very first book that I rated 5 out of 5 stars ever. I wasn't really tapped into like the rating scale before I started reading and getting into book talk and things, but this is the first book that I developed a hyperfixation on that changed my perspective for the good, that I recommended to everyone. I gave it to my brother-in-law as a gift, not even knowing if this book is in his taste, but because I was so fixated on it, I felt the need to tell everyone about this book, even if they didn't care. This book is decently popular, so it's not like a hidden gem or anything. You've likely heard about it. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I do not buy books. I am mostly a library user, but if I do like a book, I am inclined to buy it, and if I feel like I want to reread it, I know I'm gonna buy it. So this is a book I felt so compelled by that I knew I was gonna have it. Okay. It's so hard to describe things that you're so excited about because you want to really do it well and sell people on it, but it's like also really intimidating because of the pressure. Anyway, this book is about a boy born into the most unfavorable circumstances, where his mother is also at head of the most favorable circumstances. It is derived from the telling of David Copperfield. I have not read David Copperfield, but this book has almost convinced me to check it out. Demon, his original name is Damon. I was not gonna read this because I was like, ew, I don't want to read a book about demons. I'm too scared. It's just, this book is based off the fact that this is his nickname, and where he's from, people don't go by their government given names, it's just their nicknames. His story is a story of grave tragedy, and yet he's incredibly witty, incredibly humorous. The adventures that he goes through and a lot of the things that he processes, you are right along with him. I've never felt so emotionally attached to a character before. Even after I ended the book, I was just like for days just going on and on about this person to my husband. If you do not like books that just feel like they're a drag and they're like really sad, it takes a while for things to get better. This is not the book for you. If you are somebody that does not like tragedy, if you're somebody that does not like, if you like want to turn your brain off, if you like escapism, this is not for you. This book is for the people that very much thrive on themes of grief, that like a little bit of a longer story, that are into dark humor, and people that are witty in the most horrible circumstances. The themes in this book are not only of poverty and struggle, the classism that existed at this time and that still exists in this time, but also this is based in the Appalachian Mountains. I watched a documentary about Appalachia and we studied a little bit of it in high school, but it just didn't inform me, it didn't inform me as much as this book did. Even though it is fiction, the themes were just a little bit too real and the information was a little bit too on the nose, or a little bit too descriptive for you to think that like, oh, this is just completely made up. This talks about the opioid epidemic and goes into very real details. And in watching Barbara Kingsolver's interviews about this, she specifically highlighted that to open up broader themes of how the people in the Appalachian Mountains were exploited by opioids and how it was viewed as ground zero for that epidemic. And not only are you rooting for him, you're also being your eyes are also being open to themes that are very real and sad. I could go on about this forever. I need to stop. Anyway, first book that changed my life, Demon Copperhead. The next book that changed my life this is one that I think I'm gonna reread sometime soon. I haven't purchased it because the first time I read it was in high school and I didn't think about purchasing it at the time because it was assigned. It was a high school assigned book called A Raisin in the Sun. I realized that this book changed my life when one of my college professors asked us to describe a book that had a grave impact on us academically. I wrote about how this book really opened my eyes to the fact that in an academic setting, it's not all books that are completely outdated that we just keep reading because they're considered classics. It opened my eyes to the idea that books in academia can click with you and can be relatable. They don't always have to be things that you just are forced to read that are going to cause you to have resentment towards academic assigned books. I have a lot of mixed feelings towards some of the books that are assigned in school because they taught me so much, okay? Right? Like, they teach you so much and they're picked for reasons. But A Raisin in the Sun was the first book about a Black family in the 1950s that talked about things that were very prevalent for the 50s, but then also could apply to the time that I was reading them in like 2015 or 16. The story focuses on the struggle of poverty, class, racism, texturism, colorism. The things that I liked about it was just, as a Black individual, it's so hard to sit in classes sometimes and to hear themes of Blackness and to not feel like embarrassed or a little bit ashamed of them. This was the first book that I feel like I read that I went, oh my God, like I can relate to that. Oh my God, I don't feel like I want to sink into my chair and die, because this story is so incredibly powerful and moving, and people are having real conversations about the things that this book brings up. And it's not just about white Americans' perspective of the Black family. This is a Black family telling their Black story with Black characters. Although it was a story of struggle and oppression, it wasn't from the gaze of a white author, which is a lot of academia, I feel. Anyway, next book is this book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. If you are a creative, run, do not walk to this book. This book is, I think, classified under self-help, but it is far better than the typical self-help, because I feel like a lot of self-help is focused on self-improvement and in turn, productivity, like Atomic Habits is focused on like, do things little at a time and make them as realistic as possible so that you can be the best person you can be. Even like The Artist's Way, when I told somebody about this book, they were like, oh yeah, you should read The Artist's Way because it's like similar to this book. No, I was telling you about The Creative Act because I want you to read The Creative Act. Just kidding. I love you, Sarah. So this book is really good because as a creative, this will give you a lot of peace and information about not how to like create the best art that you can create, not how to channel your creative energy and like make the best projects that you ever made, but also, you know, it gives you a lot of reassurance about you or yourself as a creative. It also goes to lengths of like defining that creativity is multi-dimensional. Rick Rubin himself is a producer, very, very successful, talks about his own creative process, but isn't like a pusher of productivity culture, and I know that The Artist's Way isn't like a pusher of productivity culture. It's just, I think it contains multitudes of challenges that help you get out of your creative rut in very realistic, helpful ways. But this is a book you can simply digest and read, identify with it, take a lot of solace in it, and then also every other sentence is something that sticks in your mind and is something that'll make you go, that was really interesting. I'm gonna flip to a random page. See a sentence that I like, and it's gonna, this is a quote page. I don't want to do a quote page. Okay. Here. Pressures and expectations come from different directions. Society's mores dictate what's right and wrong, what's accepted and frowned upon, what's celebrated and reviled. The artists who define each generation are generally the ones who live outside of these boundaries, not the artists who embody the belief and conventions of their time, but the ones who transcend them. Art is confrontation. It widens the audience's reality, allowing them to glimpse life through a different window, one with the potential for a glorious new view. What are we talking about? Just incredibly inspirational, not something that is like going to be like, this is how you need to create, this is when you need to create, this is how you're gonna, you know, just very impactful, beautiful, life-changing. Oh, loved it. Okay, another book that I read, we're going back into kind of like a heavier historical thing, is I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. Oh, this is actually gonna be hard for me, I feel like, to collect my thoughts on. I just read this book last month. I'm kind of sad I didn't do what I read in, was it just March or April? April. I have a college degree, by the way. I Am Malala is a book that is about Malala Yousafzai, who was shot because she protested a ban that banned girls from being able to go to school and educate themselves. She is an education rights activist, a women's rights activist. She comes from Swat in Pakistan. Wow. It's crazy because I read this through audiobook. So the narrator, who is not Malala, pronounces it as Pakistan, but I know from my accent, I would say Pakistan, but it feels so wrong because I heard Pakistan all throughout the book. Anyway, forgive me. So Malala was shot. I'm pretty sure you know the story. Maybe you don't. My husband didn't know who she was. So now I'm like, I thought that everybody knew who this woman was. I really thought everybody knew because the story was so shocking. And one of the reasons that I wanted to read this book was because I didn't quite understand how her story got to the United States. And I know that she was on Ellen, but I was like, how did Ellen know of her if she was in Pakistan? You know? Here I'm saying Pakistan like a poser, but it's just the way that I read it. So she actually was in this documentary called Class Dismissed. And her father had been activists for the right to pursue an education specifically if you're a woman, because that was being pushed by the Taliban. I even wanted to say Taliban. And they were in a documentary. She was kind of well known in the media with her locals and then also in America. So when she got shot, it became news because she was already known. Anyway, this book is about her story and leading up to when she got shot, as well as explaining how they got into that situation where the Taliban was able to take over where they were located, and how her father had always instilled very progressive views in her, and about how, as somebody who was very proud of where she was, her father was not wanting to leave where they were just because of violent, horrible threat, and they wanted to fight back. So the book is about activism and standing up for your right to education, no matter what. And she states in the book, I wouldn't change anything about what happened, even though she details her injuries after she got shot, and they are incredibly, like, drastically traumatic, really horrible things. The book just really opened my eyes, not only to the fact that, of course, disparity exists. There has been an interruption. I will be back soon. Okay. Not gonna lie, my husband came home, and then I felt like I was inconvenienced, but really, I just had to get creative because he needed the car and I needed the car, so I just had to drop him off. And then I was like, no, but my video, so let's just finish it here. So I was saying, I Am Malala really changed my life because, and it's hard to say things like, oh, that changed my life when there's no action really behind it. You know, it's not like I read it, I started like a foundation or anything. I read it and it changed my mind and my worldview as to how I think about systems of control. Because unnervingly, what I read from her recounting the announcement of the ban of girls not being able to go to school and get an education is reminding me of what I am seeing in America, to be honest. Like, not even just with things like book bans, but we're now seeing people being asked about how they talk about Trump at like customs, like Hassan Piker and Nikki Glazer's comedian friend. And all of these things are being made up by people in power, the same way that the Taliban just made up that like women couldn't go to school. There is nothing helpful about that. It is just hateful and controlling. It's just making me sick a little bit. It's just making me a little sick. And I think it also just is a grave reminder, although things are drastically different from Pakistan to the United States, systems of control have very similar themes. And the United States, I think, likes to view themselves as like so progressed, so up there, so different than the rest of the world. As somebody who lived in different countries before coming to the States, well, lived in different countries and is living in the United States, it even does feel like that. Like, it feels like the United States is so, it feels like it's like very much like up there, you know, like different. But the themes of what I'm seeing in the way that we are going backwards is really reminding me that like America's really not that different in terms of like leaders and the things that they say and the things that they want. It changed me because it's discouraging me, but it's also a light that is needed to be shown, that like systems of control are happening with the leaders we allow. God, it's so disgusting, dude. Anyway, I wanted to put in an honorable mention. This is like really odd. This is really odd. This book didn't change my life, but it really triggered me and impacted me. The book is Counting the Cost. The book is Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar. Okay, Jill Duggar, whatever her last name is from her husband. That book was really confronting because she's talking about the religious abuse, you know, that she suffered. And as somebody who grew up as a pastor's kid, I'm not going to say that I was abused, but But the themes of control in religious structures also, and the deconstruction that happens, I think, is something that I really related to her on. And the like fear that she basically, like, I listened to it through audio. You could hear the fear of her recounting her past experiences with talking to her dad, talking about the IBLP, talking about many different things. And it just like, it really struck a nerve with me, especially when you go on to have your own faith and you're shaping that, like you're deconstructing basically. It's hard to kind of talk about because you feel like you feel like you're betraying the things that you were taught, but you're really just figuring out for yourself what you believe in. And I really appreciated the way that she talked about it. And I don't want to put it on the same level as like every other book, but it was like very much up there for me in terms of like triggering me. Whoa. That's all I have. Please comment a book that changed your life. Comment if you have any experiences with the books that changed my life. Give me a book recommendation. It better have changed your life. Just kidding. I feel so mean when I do stuff like that. But seriously. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever time of day it is, I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, or night.